The transport station was crowded that evening, filled with people rushing to catch their rides. Voices rose, footsteps echoed, and the smell of metal, oil, and smoke filled the air. Among the noise, one figure moved slowly, almost invisible. It was an old alien, his back bent, his skin pale and wrinkled, and his clothes torn and dusty. He walked to the ticket counter with shaky hands, clutching a small pouch. People around him noticed, but instead of helping, they looked away. Some whispered, some smirked. To them, he was nothing but a useless wanderer, too weak and too old to matter. The alien placed the pouch on the counter, trying to buy a ticket. The worker behind the glass frowned, counted the coins, and shook his head. "You don't have enough," the worker said coldly. The alien lowered his head, his lips trembling. His voice came out broken. "Please. Just one ticket. I need to go home." But the worker shrugged. Rules are rules. He pushed the pouch back. The people behind him grew impatient. "Move. You're wasting time," one shouted. Another laughed. "Old fool, can't even afford a ride." The alien stood, frozen. His hands shook as he picked up the pouch, his eyes dim with hopelessness. For a moment, it looked like he might collapse right there. That was when he appeared, a human janitor. Still in his work uniform, holding a mop in one hand, stopped when he saw the scene. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, and nobody really paid attention to him. But something in his chest twisted when he saw the alien's face, tired, humiliated, and broken. The human stepped forward, pulling out a small card. "I'll pay for his ticket," he said. The worker blinked in surprise. "What? Why?" "Because he needs it," the human answered simply. His voice was calm, but firm. The people around laughed louder. "Are you serious? Spending your money on that thing? He's nothing but trash." Another mocked, but the human ignored them. He tapped his card on the scanner. The machine beeped, and a new ticket printed out. He took it gently and placed it in the alien's shaking hand. The old alien stared at him, silent at first, his cloudy eyes filled with tears. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, he whispered in a trembling voice, "Why? Why would you help me?" The human gave a small smile. "Because no one else would." The alien's breath caught. His eyes glowed faintly, almost like a hidden spark waking inside. He bowed deeply, his frail body trembling, and then clutched the ticket like it was the most precious treasure in the universe. The station fell silent for a moment. The laughter stopped, but not because they felt shame. It was because something about that old alien's reaction felt strange, too deep, too powerful for a simple ticket. The alien turned back one last time, looking at the human with an expression. That was not just gratitude, but something heavier, like a promise. His lips moved in a strange whisper, words in a language no one around could understand. The human frowned, tilting his head. He didn't catch the meaning, but he felt the weight of it. The alien finally boarded the transport. The doors closed, and the vehicle rose into the night sky, leaving the human standing there, mop still in hand. People around shook their heads. "What a waste," one muttered. "Stupid human," another said. But deep inside, the human felt uneasy. It was just a small act of kindness, yet something about that old alien's eyes, that glowing whisper, stuck in his mind. It felt like he had touched something far bigger than himself. As he walked back to his cleaning duties, he had no idea that in just a few hours, the sky above would open, and 3 elite starships would descend, looking not for a ruler, not for a soldier, but for him. The human janitor tried to forget this strange moment at the station, but it kept replaying in his mind. The whisper of the old alien, the faint glow in his eyes, the bow that felt heavier than gratitude. it all refused to fade. He sat later that night in his small apartment, eating a cheap meal out of a plastic box. The city outside buzzed with lights and noise, but inside his room, it was quiet. He turned on the small news screen in the corner. Reports scrolled past. Political arguments, trade wars, alien disputes. None of it really mattered to him. He was just a worker, a man who scrubbed floors so others could walk in shining halls. Yet tonight felt different. His chest carried a strange tid. Wait. He remembered the alien's words, those whispered sounds. He didn't know the language, but the tone had been clear. It wasn't just thank you. It was something else, something almost sacred at the transport station. Rumors had already begun to spread. People told each other that janitor wasted his money on an old beggar. Others mocked, humans are soft, too soft. That's why no one respects them in the galaxy. But a few had noticed the glow in the alien's eyes. They whispered quietly, nervously. Did you see that? It wasn't normal. The human didn't hear those rumors. He simply went back to work the next day, pushing his mop through long, echoing corridors of glass and steel. He hummed softly, trying to keep himself calm. But deep down, he felt watched, like unseen eyes followed him in the corner of the hall. A pair of alien guards muttered to each other as he passed. One tilted his head. That's the human, he whispered. The one who paid for the old man's ticket. Yes, strange, isn't it? You saw how the elder bowed. The other guard snorted. Bah, nonsense. The elder was just another useless drifter, but their eyes betrayed unease. That night, the janitor walked home under the cold stars. The city lights flickered, and the streets were half empty. His footsteps echoed on the stone path. He looked up at the night sky, wondering if the old alien had reached home safely, for reasons he couldn't explain. He hoped so. Suddenly, a faint sound brushed past his ear like a whisper carried on the wind. He froze, looking around. Street was empty. The wind was still. But in his mind, he heard the old alien's voice again. Clearer this time, echoing inside him. You will be remembered. His heart raced. He rubbed his temples, thinking he was tired. Maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe stress was making him hear things, but the words felt too real, far above. Unseen in the darkness of space, signals were already moving. 3 colossal ships stirred, their engines humming with ancient power. Their course changed, slowly, bending toward the small city where the janitor lived. On the streets below, the human knew nothing of this. He only felt a growing sense of tension, as if the universe itself was waiting for something. Back in his apartment, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed everything. The laughter of the crowd, the coldness of the worker, the trembling hand of the alien, and that glowing stare. Why me? He whispered to himself. It was just a ticket, just a ticket. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. He felt a chill crawl over his skin. Oh. Somewhere out there, the old alien was carrying his ticket like a sacred symbol. And somewhere out, their powers far beyond human understanding had taken notice of him, and when they arrived, nothing on Earth would ever be the same. The following evening began like any other. The human janitor walked home after a long shift, his shoulders heavy with tiredness, his mop still drying on his back. The city buzzed around him, bright screens, floating cars, and the endless chatter of people rushing to their own lives. But tonight, something felt strange. The air carried a weight, a silent pressure that pressed against his chest. Even the stars above seemed sharper, brighter, like watchful eyes staring down at Earth. He tried to ignore it. He told himself it was just exhaustion. But when he looked up again, sky did something it had never done before. A deep hum rolled across the night, low and powerful, like the growl of a giant beast. The ground trembled. Windows shook in their frames. People on the streets stopped, walking, their heads turning toward the heavens. At first, it was just one light. A small dot, moving too fast to be a plane, too steady to be a meteor. Then another appeared beside it. Then a third. The lights grew larger, brighter, burning through the clouds. The humming grew into a roar that shook the buildings. Panic spread. Quickly, is it an attack? Someone shouted, "Military drills." Another guessed, their voice trembling. The human stood frozen, his eyes wide. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear the noise around him. He knew these were not human crafts. Their movement, their size, their raw power, this was something else. The clouds tore apart as the shapes broke through. And then everyone saw them. 3 starships, enormous and terrifying, descended in perfect formation. Their metal bodies glowed. With alien energy, every edge sharp, every panel alive with blue light. They were not warships made for intimidation. They were something higher, something elite. The kind of vessels whispered about in stories, but never seen by ordinary citizens. The crowd screamed and scattered. Some ran for shelter. Others dropped to their knees, praying. Cars swerved off the road. Sirens blared in the distance. But the ships didn't fire. They didn't bomb. They simply hovered, casting massive shadows over the city. Their engines humming with power that rattled the bones of every human watching. The janitor's legs felt weak. He stumbled back against a wall, his mop clattering to the ground. Why? "Why here?" he whispered. Then he realized. His chest turned cold. The alien's whisper, the glowing eyes, the silent promise. This was because of him. As the ship slowed, the air grew heavier. The night itself seemed to bow beneath their presence. Every window reflected their sharp, alien design. The human felt his throat dry as one of the ships shifted, lowering directly above his street. The crowd noticed. Fingers pointed. Voices shouted in fear. "They're here for someone. Who is it?" "They'll kill us all." The human felt dozens of eyes turning toward him. He wanted to deny it, to melt into the shadows, but the massive starship hung above him like a crown. Of doom, the central ship opened its belly. A ramp extended downward, glowing with white-blue light. From inside, shadows moved tall, armored figures with weapons and banners. Every step they took shook the street. Their armor gleamed like liquid metal, engraved with symbols no human could read. Helmets shaped like beasts hid their faces. Their march was perfect, their presence overwhelming. The crowd fell silent, trembling. Even the bravest couldn't speak. And then something happened no one expected. The soldiers didn't raise their weapons. They didn't shout. They didn't attack. Instead, as they reached the ground, they turned toward the human janitor, and all at once, they knelt. The sound of metal armor hitting the pavement rang out like thunder. Rows of alien warriors bowed their heads to the man who still smelled of soap and sweat from cleaning floors. The crowd gasped in disbelief. The janitor staggered back, his voice breaking. No, you've got the wrong person. I'm no one. But the soldiers remained, heads lowered, their bodies unmoving, as if he was the center of their universe. Above them, the starships pulsed with light, as if the entire fleet acknowledged the kneeling gesture. The human's hands shook. His mouth went dry. Around him, whispers spread like fire. Why him? He's just a worker. Is this some kind of prophecy? And standing at the edge of the glowing ramp, another figure appeared. Taller than the soldiers, cloaked in deep silver robes, eyes burning with knowledge that seemed endless. He raised a hand toward the human, and his voice echoed through the street like rolling thunder. He has shown kindness to the forgotten. He is chosen. The janitor's breath caught in his throat. The old alien's words returned to him, heavy as stone. You will be remembered. Now he understood, and yet he wished he didn't. The street was silent, except for the low hum of the colossal starships above. The soldiers stayed kneeling, their armor shining under the glow of alien lights. The crowd stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. A janitor, a simple human, standing in dirty work clothes, now had an army of alien elites bowing. Before him, the human felt his chest tighten. His legs trembled, his hands shook, and his heart pounded so hard it hurt. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. He wanted to shout at them, to tell them they had made a mistake, but his voice wouldn't leave his throat. From the ramp of the central ship, the tall, cloaked figure began to walk forward. Every step echoed, though his feet touched the ground. Softly, it was as if the very air carried his presence, bending around him. The crowd, without even realizing, moved back. Fear and awe gripped them. The janitor's breath caught when the figure lowered his hood. His face was not old, not frail like the alien he had helped at the station. No, this face was strong, youthful, regal. His skin glowed faintly with markings of silver, his eyes sharp and endless like stars that had seen centuries pass. Yet, deep inside those eyes, the janitor recognized something. It was him. The old alien, changed, renewed, transformed. The crowd gasped. Some fell to their knees, others whispered in disbelief. Impossible. It's him. The janitor stumbled. Back. You. But you, the alien raised a hand, silencing him with only a gesture. His voice was calm, yet it thundered through the hearts of everyone who listened. You gave me a ticket when the galaxy gave me nothing. The words struck like lightning. The janitor shook his head. I just paid for a ride. All but the alien's eyes glowed brighter. To you, it was small. To me, it was everything. Behind him, the soldiers pressed their heads lower to the ground, as though the truth of their leader's words was sacred. The janitor's thoughts spun in circles. Leader, soldiers, ships. What had he stepped into? The alien took another step forward, now standing only a few feet away. He looked into the human's eyes with a strange mixture of pride and sorrow. You showed compassion when none dared to. That compassion has bound you to us. The human wanted to deny it. He wanted to run. But deep inside, he knew he couldn't. His act at the station had not been forgotten. It had been seen, remembered, and now honored in a way too great for him to carry. The crowd, still trembling, began whispering faster. Who is he? Why would their leader bow to a human? Is he their chosen one? The janitor clenched his fists. His voice cracked as he shouted, Stop! I'm no one. I clean floors. I'm not chosen. I'm not a leader. You've got the wrong person. For a moment, silence fell. And then, the alien, the same elder he had once seen weak and dying, spoke softly, almost kindly. Greatness does not come from power. It comes from choice. You chose kindness when the world chose cruelty. That is why we bow. The words made the human's heart ache. He remembered the mocking laughter at the station, the way people had spat at the old alien, the way no one had cared. He remembered how small his act had felt in that moment. Just a swipe of a card, just a ticket. And yet, here he was. The alien turned to the soldiers. With one wave of his hand, they rose as one, their armor clashing like thunder. They stood tall, silent, waiting for their leader's command. The alien looked back at the janitor. His eyes softened. You are not alone anymore. The janitor's chest grew heavy. His mind screamed at him to reject this, to run away, to hide. But another part of him, quiet, almost whispering, knew the truth. Something far bigger than himself had begun the moment he gave that ticket away. The sky above rumbled again as the starships adjusted, their lights bathing the entire city in an otherworldly glow. Humanity stood watching, trembling between fear and awe. The janitor whispered to himself, almost too quiet for anyone to hear, "What have I done?" But deep down, he already knew the answer. He had changed everything. The street glowed under the light of the alien ships, and the silence weighed heavier than stone. The janitor stood frozen, while the tall alien leader, no longer frail, no longer weak, watched him with calm, burning eyes. The human's hands shook. "Who are you really?" Kay asked, his voice barely a whisper. The alien smiled faintly, a smile that carried both sorrow and strength. "To many, I am a ruler. To some, I am an emperor. To my enemies, I am a target." T paused, his voice lowering. "But to you, I was just an old traveler who had nothing." The crowd gasped. Some aliens in the audience fell to their knees in shock. "The emperor?" they whispered. "The hidden emperor." The janitor's knees almost gave out. His chest tightened as if a mountain had been dropped on him. "Emperor," he stammered. "You mean that night I gave you a ticket?" The alien's silver-marked face grew serious. "Yes, you did not know. And yet, you chose kindness." He raised his hand, and a strange hum filled the air. The glowing patterns on his skin pulsed brighter. Suddenly, a giant hologram appeared above them, cast by the ships. It showed images of trials aliens tested in secret, given chances to prove their hearts. Many turned away from the weak. Many mocked. Few helped. The emperor's voice echoed across the street. "For centuries, I have hidden myself, not as a ruler, but as the forgotten. I walk among crowds, old and weak, to see if there is compassion left in the galaxy." The janitor swallowed hard. You were testing me." "Yes," the emperor said. His tone was heavy, like a hammer striking stone. "And you passed." The janitor shook his head in disbelief. "But it was nothing. Just a ride. Just a simple ride." The emperor's eyes sharpened. "Nothing? To you, it was small. But to me, it was proof. Power, wealth, armies, these mean nothing if kindness dies. Your act was the spark I sought." Then, soldiers around them remained silent, their armor gleaming in the light of the ships. Every word the emperor spoke was like sacred truth to them. The human pressed his hands against his head. His life had been simple cleaning floors, ignored by everyone, forgotten in the background. And now, suddenly, he was the center of a secret trial that had spanned centuries. The emperor stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the janitor. "You gave without expecting. You helped without knowing. That is the rarest strength of all." The janitor's voice cracked. "Why me? Out of all people in this city, why me?" The emperor's gaze softened, because sometimes the strongest hearts hide in the humblest places. The words hit like a blade cutting through doubt. The human felt his chest tighten, his throat dry. He remembered the laughter of the crowd when he had paid for the ticket. The way they mocked him, the way they called the alien trash, and now those same people watched, their faces pale, their eyes wide, as the truth crushed their arrogance. The emperor lifted his hand again. The ships roared in unison, sending waves of light across the night sky. His voice carried far, reaching every ear, every heart. "This human has shown us what many have forgotten. Compassion without reward, kindness without fear. From this moment, he is recognized by our throne." The soldiers slammed their fists against their armor, a thunderous salute that shook the ground. The crowd flinched, some falling to their knees. others bowing out of fear. The janitor stood trembling, sweat rolling down his face. His life had been turned upside down in a single night. He wanted to run, to hide, but the Emperor's eyes locked him in place. "Do not fear," the Emperor said gently. "This is only the beginning." The human felt his stomach drop. The beginning of what? And as if answering his unspoken thought, the Emperor's voice deepened. "With this honor comes danger. Many will now seek you. They will hunt you. They will test you. But you will not be alone." The janitor's heart sank. His hands trembled. Harder, he wasn't a warrior, not a leader. He was just a man with a mop. But the Emperor's gaze was unyielding. "You are more than you believe." The night shook as the ships above shifted again, their lights blazing brighter, their shadows stretching across the earth. The human knew, with growing fear, that his life of quiet days and simple work was gone forever. The Emperor's words lingered in the air like thunder that refused to fade. The soldiers stood tall, the crowd trembled, and the janitor's world spun out of control. He had been a nobody, a man who cleaned floors, invisible to most, forgotten by all. Now, he stood in the center of 3 alien starships, with the most powerful ruler in the sector looking at him as if he were the key to everything. The janitor's throat tightened. "I'm not ready for this. I'm not a hero. I can't be what you think I am." The Emperor's eyes glowed brighter. "You are already more than you know, and to prove it." He raised his hand. From the ramp of the starship, 2 soldiers stepped forward, carrying a long black case. They placed it gently before the janitor and stepped back, heads lowered. The case opened with a hiss. Inside lay something strange, half weapon, half crown, pulsing with blue light. The metal seemed alive, shifting softly like it breathed. Strange symbols glowed across its surface. The moment the janitor looked at it, his chest grew cold, as if the object itself reached into his soul. He stepped back. "What? What is that?" The Emperor's voice was calm but heavy. "It is called the Crown of Oaths. It has rested for centuries, waiting for one worthy to carry it. Many have tried. All have failed. Only one who acts without greed, without pride, can bear it." The janitor shook his head violently. "No, you've made a mistake. I can't touch that thing. I'm just a worker. I mop floors. That's all. I do." The Emperor's gaze did not waver. "And yet, you did what kings would not. That is why it responds to you." The crowd gasped as the object stirred. Slowly, it rose from the case on its own, floating in the air. The blue light grew stronger. It drifted toward the janitor, humming softly, as if drawn by his very heartbeat. The janitor backed up against the wall, his chest heaved. Sweat rolled down his face. "Stop it. Stop." But the crown hovered closer until it floated right in front of him. The air shook with its power. Every soldier, every bystander, bowed, their heads in silence. The Emperor's voice echoed again. "Take it, and you will be guarded by my fleet. Refuse it, and you will return to your life. But know this, the galaxy has already seen you. Enemies will come for you, whether you choose this or not." The janitor froze. His mind screamed. He thought of his small apartment, his quiet meals, his mop waiting in a closet. He thought of the laughter of the crowd at the station, the way people mocked the weak. He thought of the old alien's trembling eyes that night, filled with desperate hope. And now, here he was, holding the future in his shaking hands. "I never asked for this," he whispered. "No one ever does," the Emperor answered softly. "But destiny does not ask." The janitor stared at the crown. He could feel it pulsing like a living heart, each beat matching his own. His hands trembled as he slowly lifted them. The crowd held its breath. His fingers touched the glowing metal. "Aye," Shock raced through him. His body stiffened. Images flashed in his mind, vast galaxies burning, armies clashing, empires rising and falling. He saw visions of himself standing among alien rulers, his voice carrying weight across worlds. The power tried to pull him deeper, to swallow him whole. His knees buckled, his breath caught in his chest. For a moment, he thought he would die. But then, deep inside him, he remembered the simple reason he had bought that ticket. Not for power, not for rewards, just because it was right. The vision shifted. The chaos stilled. The crown pulsed gently, no longer overwhelming him. The emperor's voice boomed. It accepts you. The soldiers slammed their fists to their armor in salute, their voices rising in unison. Honor to the guardian. The janitor staggered, his chest heaving. He looked down at his hands, glowing faintly with blue light. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't sure he would ever be ready. But now, there was no turning back. The emperor stepped closer, his voice low and heavy with warning. Remember, this gift is also a curse. With it, you will carry our protection. But with it, you will also carry our enemies. The janitor swallowed hard. His chest burned with fear. His life had been ordinary, invisible, safe. Now he stood on a path where safety no longer existed. He whispered to himself, almost too quietly for anyone else to hear, "What happens to me now?" The emperor's gaze was steady, unshaken. "Now, human, your story begins." Above them, the 3 starships roared, their engines shaking the earth. The night sky burned with blue fire, as if the entire universe had just taken notice of a simple man who once mopped floors. The night sky blazed with alien light, the 3 starships hovering like gods above the city. Their engines hummed with power older than Earth itself, and yet their focus was on one man, a janitor with shaking hands. Now holding the crown of oaths, the crowd stared at him in disbelief. Some bowed out of fear, others out of awe. To them, he was no longer just a man who scrubbed floors. He was something more, but inside, he still felt small. His heart pounded, his breath came heavy, and his mind screamed with doubt. "Why me? I didn't want this," he whispered. The emperor stepped closer, his voice calm but strong. "Because destiny does not ask permission. You acted when others turned away. That choice is enough." The janitor looked at the glowing crown in his hands. It pulsed softly, alive, like a heart beating in rhythm with his own. He could feel its weight, not just the metal, but the responsibility it carried. Armies, empires, enemies, all of it, now tied to him. The soldiers bowed their heads lower, chanting as one, "Guardian of the crown, protector of the throne." The janitor shook his head. "I'm not a warrior. I'm not a leader. I'm just me." The emperor's eyes glowed brighter. "That is why you are worthy. Leaders who seek power bring only ruin. Leaders who fear it bring balance." The janitor's chest ached. He remembered his quiet life, his small apartment, his mop leaning in a corner. He remembered the old alien's trembling hands at the station, and how no one had helped him. Only him. He swallowed hard. Maybe that was enough. The emperor turned to his soldiers and raised his hand. "Bear witness. Tonight, the galaxy has found its new guardian." The ships above roared, their lights flashing like stars in celebration. The ground shook as thousands of alien voices echoed across the city. A chorus of power that rattled the bones of every human who heard it. The janitor's heart pounded. Fear mixed with something else, something warmer, quiet strength. He clenched his fists. For the first time, he lifted his head high and spoke, his voice trembling but clear. "If I am to be your guardian, then I will protect not just you, but everyone who is weak. No one should be left behind." The crowd gasped. The emperor's eyes widened for a moment, then softened into a rare smile. "Then you are not only our guardian," he said slowly, "but a voice for all who suffer." The janitor stood straighter. His fear didn't vanish, but it no longer chained him. His words carried weight now, not because he wanted power, but because he chose kindness. The emperor placed a hand on his shoulder. "From this night on, you are family to us. Wherever you walk, my fleets will follow. Wherever you speak, my armies will listen." The janitor's chest tightened. He wasn't sure he wanted armies, or fleets, or thrones. But he knew one thing: he would never again turn away from someone in need. The soldiers slammed their fists against their armor. In thunderous salute, honor to the guardian. They roared, their voices shaking the stars. The janitor closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of that simple night at the transport station. One ticket, one small act. And now, this. When he opened his eyes again, he looked not at the emperor, not at the soldiers, but at the people watching, the humans, the aliens, the ones who had mocked and laughed. "Remember this," he said, his voice stronger now. "Kindness is not weakness. It changes everything." The words echoed across the street, carried by the hum of the ships above. The people stared at him in silence. Some lowered their heads in shame, remembering how they had mocked the old alien. Others looked at him with hope, their eyes wide. With new respect, the emperor raised his hand, and the starships began to ascend, their engines blazing like suns. The soldiers returned to the ramp, their steps heavy but precise. Before he followed, the emperor gave the janitor one last look. "Your life will never be simple again. But know this, human, you are no longer forgotten. You are remembered." The janitor felt his throat tighten. He gave a small nod. "Then I'll make it mean something." The emperor's smile was faint, but real. Then he turned, and the soldiers followed him back into the ship. The ramp closed, and the massive vessels rose higher until they vanished into the sky. Leaving the city in silence, the people remained frozen, staring at the human who had been left behind. A janitor, a nobody, now chosen by an empire. He bent down, picked up his mop, and held it in one hand while the crown pulsed in the other. His life would never again be ordinary. But maybe that was okay, because sometimes the smallest kindness creates the greatest future.